And off we go into the world of peonies. It's been a long time since I've made a video, so y'all gotta have some patience with me. And I'm gonna have some patience with me too. So, peonies. I love peonies. Who doesn't love a peony? I have horrible luck keeping the things alive in the real world. So I have a particular fondness for them in the beaded form because that's all I got. So I think one of maybe the fourth piece I ever made, like actual arrangement, was centered around a large peony. And so since then, they've evolved, and every way I do them seems different every time. And at that time, I got really excited by just doing all kinds of different components. I would just do a little bit of everything in there. This is actually a really old one that I used later on to practice painting on. It was actually this color, the Ivory Ceylon transparent one, my absolute favorite matte bead. So this was actually 100% this color. The whole thing was this color. And then I painted it. I painted the petals before I assembled. So I guess I had planned to do that. So I had made the petals a long time ago. I think I did at least. It's been so long. I actually got a little splash of blue there and I didn't know how to fix it. Yeah, it was a mess. And so this one has everything but the kitchen sink in it. I mean, we've got scalloped, we've got round, we've got continuous loops laced together, we've got pointed basic frames, the whole thing. Now the problem, and so I kind of kept that design though, because I really like that. I wanted a lot of fluff factor. I loved fluffy peonies, right? But there's a problem with those, and I'll show you a more modern one. So then I kept making them until probably a few months ago. I don't know, 6-7 months ago. So here are some more recent ones that I made with, again, the everything but the kitchen sink method, which has its moments. So I'm not over it completely, but it has, first of all, they're heavy as heck. So again, you can see they're actually kind of different from each other even. So every time I just kind of did a different configuration of the scalloped, the round. This one doesn't even have any round basics in it. And some continuous loops. This one, I don't know what the heck's going on with this one. Oh, it has this one even has like side loops attached. Like there's all like I did just like I said, everything but the kitchen sink on these. And I would just do different ones every time, depending on how I felt. And I don't mind them. I think they're pretty and everything, but as was pointed out to me, and I was kind of noticing too, is that, well, the bottom line is these are beaded flowers. So they have a thickness to them that natural petals do not. So if I try to do the exact same number of petals on a really fluffy peony, the problem is they start to push up. And I run out of space for that middle. So I can't do that deep, like really fluffy middle. In fact, this was probably the closest that I got to that. I have the fluffy middle in here, and those are 15s. But then I had to kind of, you see from the profile, I actually had to bring up the pointed middle to like give it that illusion that it was sunk in more. It isn't really, and if I brought these up more, it just would have been this big honking flower, right? Which is fine. Those have their place, and I still like this one. Notice I painted these slightly underneath, the beads themselves, just to give them sort of a natural furrow to them. Like that's painted there, but the actual bead color is this color right here. And you can see there's some painting on the inside in there. So we'll talk about painting towards the end of the month. Optional, of course. In fact, the ones I'm about to show you, I didn't paint at all, and I love them just as much. It's a fun thing if you want to do it. But so as you notice, the centers, you end up having a very short, fringe for the centers, because you can't get down in there because there's so many petals pushing everything up, right? So as my beading buddy Suzanne pointed out, why don't I try a looser version? I mean, in real life, I do like the fluffy versions, but you know what? In beaded life, and I like all peonies, so period in real life, but slightly prefer the fluffier ones. But in beaded life, I think it makes more sense. Again, up to you. We're going to start with the looser version, and then we'll do some component forms towards the end, and you can mix and match and make your own. Like I said, these don't have even remotely the same situation going on. I guess remotely. So then that's when I moved into the looser petal formation. Right, so I liked these, which you might have seen pictures of. I posted them before. And so these have less petals. In fact, they have 14 petals. And every petal is a scalloped version. These actually were slightly painted. I didn't paint the basic frame one, but I did paint these a little bit underneath. You can see they get a little green under there. It's not really quite green. I did a weird mixture. But the cool thing about these is that you can get deep in there and get that really fluffy center, which is just so much fun and just gives them such a, I don't know, I just love these. So I was very thankful to Suzanne for suggesting that because it's cool. She has actually good luck keeping peonies alive in the real world, so she has a little bit more of an understanding of how they work. So that's what I did. So this was the new design. These are 14 petals, 6 being slightly smaller than the 8 on the outside. I did sort of this fluffy sort of underleaf situation, not really a calyx situation. We'll get to that later too. So these were all scalloped, and then I did this darker version here. The irony being that the color of this bead is actually called Peony, which is cool. I guess that's not ironic at all. It's the opposite of irony. And then you still were able to get that fluffiness in there. So my goal, though, for the beginning of our bead along was I was like, well, why can't we make one I want to try, since one of the components I use all the time and everyone uses for peonies, it's just a straight up basic frame. So I was like, I want to try to make a peony that's all basic frame. And so I was like, okay, that's what we'll start with the bead along, because then we all kind of know our basic frames, right? So that's when the current design came in. And again, we're going to, towards the end of the month, we'll visit with all of these designs. But right now, let's focus on this basic frame one, which I will take out of the vase that I had taken pictures of. Jeez Louise, did I glue it in there? So here it is. You've seen pictures of it when we talked about how we're going to do this. And this one is all basic frame. And I think it actually is pretty darn cute for that, right? I'm quite happy with it. I love the color. I'm super into it. It's a Matsuno color. I don't know the number because my local bead shop does not use it, and I just ordered a half kilo of it because I love it so much. It's like this. She calls it light pink. What does she call it? Light pink neon, I think, or something like that. I don't even know if I have a current. Here's one. Neon light pink, and this is what it looks like in the bottle, and it just comes out kind of papery looking. I love that. And then the inside, a bunch of 15s. We'll talk about the inside later. This is still the prototype. I actually flipped around the lacing for what we're going to do, so you don't see it in there anymore. And, we'll get to the lacing when we get to the inner petals. And then just kind of a little base underneath it. And then we'll talk about the leaves. But we're going to talk about the petals tonight. We're going to work on those. Now, here's where when did I start this? I don't know, 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. I can't even remember. Not that long ago. 4 years ago? About. So I still don't know all the terminology. I kind of figured out my own stuff. So I kind of make up my own words. And one thing, though, also I realized, too, it was kind of naive of me to think, okay, basic frame, so it's going to be simple for everyone. Well, the problem with doing it all basic frame is these are some wide basic frames. But that's a good thing to practice, I realize, because I don't practice that much. So we're going to be doing, like, the outer ones are 21 row basic frames. So they're going to get very unwieldy. And you're going to probably be cursing me a little bit by the time you get to the end of them. Now, but I'm a big, huge fan of lacing. The first year, possibly even 2, I hated lacing. I just would not do it unless I absolutely had to. I mean, I look back, there's some older pieces that aren't out in the world and gone already, or ones that I kept around here. And I'm like, wow, I did not lace that? How did I not lace that? Good thing it didn't go out in the world. Probably there's ones out in the world that I didn't lace. I don't know what to think about that. But lacing is great. I'm now a big, huge fan of lacing. So, because it kind of fixes a lot of stuff. Lacing is your friend. And it's particularly going to be your friend with these. Because when they get unwieldy and they look a little bit sloppy when you're making them, once you lace them, they're going to get back under control. So I know I used to say boss of the wire a lot. And I believe in that. But I want to move beyond my catchphrase. Well, to a new catchphrase. This time we're going to be boss of the beads. Now, what did I mean by that? We're going to take simple basic frames and we're going to give them personality. We're going to give them shape and fun and curl them up. That's why this thing, I think, looks kind of fun, is because they're just basic frames, but they're crumpled and they're wrinkled and they're furled up. And so they have a lot of personality to them. So we're going to we're going to tell the beads where we want them to go. No flat basic frames, let's just do them. Let's crumple them up. Let's have fun with it. Okay, so this is our goal for the first one. An all basic frame peony that works for pretty much, and the cool thing about it is once you get the hang of it, they are relatively quick, especially for such a big flower, that if you want to do 2 or 3, and then we're also going to do buds. We'll do that later. We're going to do a full bud with color, and this actually has a little bit of a inside in there, so it's going to be, so it has a little bud inside, so you can kind of open it more if you want to. And then we'll do an older bud. We're going to do a lot of leaves, because peonies like leaves, a lot of greenery. We're going to do an early bud that's all green. That's always a good skill to have, to be able to make you could use it for a kumquat or an olive or a grape. This little, putting these 2 cupped things together. I do it in kind of, again, I've definitely bossed the beads around on this one. Not very dainty with it. So we're going to talk about that too. So let's get beading for a change. Look at that. I feel like I'm starting so early with the beading. So now first video, we're going to talk about petals. Let's get this thing out of here. Let's get this thing out of here before I knock it over. Ouch. Okay. I'll just put this guy here for inspiration. Inspirational. Here, look up at the people. Say hello. Okay. That ain't working. So, anyhow, inspiration. There it is. Okay. In the corner. So, get out our handy dandy, and I've been so bad recently. Anytime I make something new, I haven't been recording it. I'll be honest, I've just been lazy as heck about it. So when I made this prototype, because I knew I was going to do it for the bead along, I really, 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 really tried to write it down. So cross fingers, I wrote it down in a way that I will understand again. So we're going to talk about, today we're going to do the first part, which is going to be 8 outer petals and 6 inner petals that are slightly smaller. And so there's going to be, it's about 3 6-inch tubes, about 100 grams. So I think, plus or minus, and this is the color I'm going to do this time. It's actually in the same brand family as this guy. And I thought that way, if I made another one, I could put them together in an arrangement, because I think they'll look kind of cool together. This one is called Neon Matte Peach. I don't think that's the real name. And I think it's, Matsuno, I think is, I'll ask her specifically what the actual number is, or I'll see it on the bag when I get it. Oh, shoot. I was supposed to call her yesterday about that. Oh, dang it. Well, so I'll do that tomorrow. So anyway, this is this color, and now we're moving into this color. Now for this, I start off normally with a big wooden spinner, and then if I need to get more dainty or use 15s, we move into our Ritter spinner. So I start out with the big bowl. And I use 24. I use a 24 gauge wire for this. In particular, I actually have a coral 24 gauge, and it actually works really well. It's kind of a cool color for this. And this is the 26 gauge from Parawire. But you can't really find it anymore unless you actually go. I don't even know if they even have it on their website anymore. It's been so long since I've gotten it. So I'm kind of hoarding the 24 of it left, because I got the 26 on Amazon actually, but they don't have the 24 gauge or anywhere on Etsy, or like I said, I don't know. I've gotten a bunch of bulk orders from Parawire, and they're cool. Sometimes it just takes a little while though. So anyhow, this one would be the obvious choice, and if you have anything like this, if you can match, that's great. Instead though, because I was hoarding that last 24, I'm using just bare copper wire, which means my hands smell like pennies. Not even kidding. And that is sort of a rose gold color. A lot of times I'll use bare copper if I'm, have a slightly peachier gold and don't want to use like rose gold, which can be pinker. So this is working pretty well. It's also very soft, which my hands are happy about, because my hands are happy about it. Let's just put it that way. So I preloaded. The other thing that's cool about Basic Frame, which right now looks like a mess and a half because I did this a few days ago, I feel like this has now like become like a comedy video here. Like, look at my fabulous wire. It's a total mess, right? No, it shouldn't be that way. I just left it unwrapped. Oops. But the cool thing about Basic Frame is you can like load a bunch on your wire. It's, oh my God, there's like a, it's got like a dust bunny attached to it. And I'm like waving at the camera. Okay, don't put the dust bunny into your... I've actually woven dust bunnies into my flowers. How did that happen? You know, that's what happens when you make flowers at 3 o'clock in the morning. So I did, you know, I just do about maybe 10 feet at a time. It's going to take more than that. But if you do any more than that, then the wire itself clearly gets unwieldy. So now, so we'll start, I always like to start with the biggest petals on the outside and get them kind of over with, right? Because those are going to be the most, let's be honest, annoying. So I would say, now, for the outside ones, I do about 3/4 inch for inside basic frame, which if you're using Japanese beads, which are fairly regular in sizing, that's about 12 beads, right? And even if you're not, I find it easier to chop off my 3/4 and then count whatever beads I'm using if you have fairly regularly sized beads, that is. Obviously, otherwise it doesn't quite work. I mean, nature does have variability, but that might be too variable for what we're going for. Because we're going to put our own variability in the furling and how tight you do it individual ones. So I'm doing 12. Now, we're doing 21 rows, right? So that's a fairly wide petal, fairly wide. So I would give, you know, and I like to have kind of what I call like a handle up top. So I like to have a big knot up here, fairly big knot because I like to hold it, right? And then I would put at least probably, I don't know, maybe you probably don't need this much. And if you do too much, you can always refold this over. Better more than less. Do like a 3-inch, you know, bit of wire for your basic frame wire. Now we're going to twist it and reduce to 2. But they don't need to be that long. So again, I normally like pull out about this much, which is, you know, I don't know, the loop itself is maybe 4 inches. And then holding it like this, right, we're going to put about, because it's going to be 21 rows again, maybe 1 1/4 inch. You can always do more if you get close to it. I'm an over wrapper, in case you hadn't figured that out. Yep, I over wrap, I over twist, I over everything. I'm Italian, well, Italian American, and, you know, we like to be extra. So that's where I'm at. So, I need to work on that sometimes. I think it makes things a little clunky, but there you go. So, you know, about, I kept going, so I was talking to you. I did a little bit more. I did 1 3/4 inches, which is fine. Pull out your little bottom here, right? Now this thing's like it's staring at me like, do it right. Now, just like a cooking show I'd already done, I already have my, other petals for this already made. You know how those cooking shows, they'll like pretend they're putting it in the oven, and then they'll be like, and look. Well, and look, here's your petals. So I know it works. I hope it works, right? Okay, so here we go. Now, I luckily, for your sake, got an app that now allows me to pause while I'm doing a video, which, you know, an iPhone doesn't let you do that. So that way, if it gets too boring, I can pause it for a half second, if I remember to. But let's talk about this hair. So we want a round top, round bottom, and I'm talking round. We want this thing to be as close to a circle as we can get. So, and the other trick is we're going to have a slightly cup to it. It's a very slight arch to it. We are not cupping it. I want to be real clear. If you do that, it's going to be too cupped, and it's going to be real hard to do it. You know, but you can make a bud out of it. It's not the end of the world, you know. So, okay, so first thing we want to do is we want to really push into this, because our first wraparound is going to be our foundation. So we want it good, right? So make sure this bare wire is really soft, which, again, I do not mind right now. I normally like the stiffer wire if I'm going to send stuff out in the world, because then the stuff keeps formation. But this is pretty good. And I think that's all my hands can handle right now. So, okay. So you're just going to have to, because we're doing 21 rows, warning, you're going to just have to be the boss, period. So that means that don't get flustered if things get a little bit wonky. It's all fixable with lacing, but there's a few things that, if you can, I want you keeping track of. And that's the tightness of your rows and keeping that slight arch to it. okay? And making sure you're hitting these at 90-degree angles. So I always start, with a little bit here, and then I'm always pushing. If you watch my other videos, I'm always talking about that tension, right? We're pushing. You can see the whites of my fingers here. Don't be too alarmed. I've been painting things too. So sometimes there's paint left over on my hands. I try to get it all off, but I don't really care that much because I'm just going to paint again anyway. I realized today, though, when I was teaching, because I teach math, and on Zoom, I looked down, I had like moss green kind of on my hand, and it looked literally like my fingers had molded. I was like, oh my God, they probably think I have some weird leprosy or something. I had to tell them no, don't worry. I'm not molding. I'm not molding. It's just paint. And then during the break, I went and washed it off. So if you see anything weird, that's what's going on. Okay. Anyhow, so pushing this in, holding here, holding tension, pushing, holding, pulling back here, pushing forward here, tension. Okay, so getting all my beads forward. So I normally hold under my fingernail. I just, of course, trim them so they're really short, but that still works. Hold that very first bead just so that stays sticking straight 90 degrees out, and then pull this up, and I use the beads to straighten, so I'll pull past that because I want to straighten any kinks out of this wire. So I want to make sure, and I do it a few times. Again, extra. You don't have to. And then I go, that's not good. We don't want that. So after I get this little bend here, I'm just really shaping just for this first wraparound because I really want a good center foundation. Keeping this straight down and just, manipulating. Your hands start to do it naturally, right? It's like muscle memory or joint memory. So I'm still holding. Notice I'm holding tight here. Holding tight, pulling, pushing. Okay. So now that I have it straight up next to it and round bottom, I'm going to look here, and I want to go to the one that's basically, I'm doing it, I like to do it on top of terry cloth, because then if the beads bounce, they don't. So I get these bar towels, so in case I spill paint, they're almost disposable, but they're actually really nice kind of dish towels. But that way the beads don't roll around as much, right? Okay, and you can just buy a box of them on Amazon for I don't know, $10 for 20 of them or something. Okay, so anyhow, back to the matter at hand. So you want to pick a bead that goes past the top bead of the middle row. So you don't want to pick a full one. So if there's a half bead past, anything that's slightly past, or even if it has to be a full bead, but you don't want to go too far past because you don't want to have a gap happening. So then right there, I choose that one. So this right, the problem with this app though is I can't zoom in. I can pause, but I can't zoom in. Seems like a small price to pay. So, okay. So I push that there. So I'm going to hold this again, holding this here, kind of holding everything tight. And I'm going to hit this thing at a 90-degree angle, and almost more than a 90-degree angle. I'm actually pushing past that, pushing it down, past using, and at this point I'm getting rid of anything else and just using the tension of this. I use it against my ring finger in my other hand here. And then pushing down past. See how, you can see how there's an indentation in my thumb, right? So I'm pushing down past, and then I'm twisting it around, bringing it around, right? And then again, pushing it down. Pushing it down. Look at that. Really hard. See how that you can see a furrow in my thumb, right? So I'm pushing that down just so that it kind of locks in there. Then bring in, and again, I'm not this deliberate on most of the other rows. It's just this first one I really want to get that foundation in there. So again, I'm doing this thing where I'm going to hold it out. I want it to be kind of rounded. So I'm going to pinch on my fingernail on that very top bead now. Pull these again straight. Use the beads to straighten the wire. Push it down. And again, right here would be my natural ending, right? So it's even with the other one. So I want to hit this really hard and tight at a 90-degree angle. Use the beads with themselves, make them take care of business, So I'm using the beads right now. That's why I'm holding with one hand. So the wire is really tight. Haven't twisted it yet. And it's pushed up under the other side now. Bring it around and then really just lock it in there. Okay. So now I have my little middle bit. Now, this is where actually I am going to bring out one of the bigger petals, so that we can look at it as we go. So this would be my middle bit right here. And as you'll see, I'm going to get a little, now this is where the boss of the beads comes in, because we're going to be shaping these beads. And it's going to be all about the beads and beads and beads. But right now, just notice we just want a slight cup to it. So you don't even have to start cupping yet at all, because it's going to be so slight. The thing about cupping you got to be real careful with is you can start out slight, but if it's a 21 row thing, it's like a snowball effect. It'll get real cupped by the end if you don't sort of monitor that, because we just want a slight cupping. That's going to be the challenge. And again, if you have to make a first one where it gets too cuppy and it gets too much so that you don't even think you could use it for this, save it for the bud. We're okay. Okay. So now again, now we're back at the bottom, pushing, holding that end so it stays round, stretching. And then, so now we have it really straight. We want it right up next to it. Okay, so at this point, I'm just keeping it fairly flat, which means I'm going to just cut it off right where it should be, twist it around. Again, always locking it in there. Okay, and then bringing this guy down, straighten, lock it in. Now, at this point, I'm going to start, because now we have 5 rows, right? It's funny because when I did first start, I really didn't know anything or have any patterns. So I didn't count rows straight across. I just counted rows out from the center, not including the center. So a 21 row basic frame, I would think of as a 10 row, which doesn't really make any sense if you think about it now, right? But so I still in my brain sometimes do that. Okay, so again, we want a slight cuppage for this, and trust me, you don't even have to worry about that too much. In fact, one way to think about it is just round down. If you get to a place where the perfect spot would either be, it's doesn't exactly fit a bead up here, so it would either be, you'd have to go, it's like a half bead. So either you'd have to go one more or one less. Go one less. Go round down. So now again, I'm pulling. And you can do a very slight bend here. And the funny thing is, like I said, I was oh, I'm going to do basic frame because that's so basic. It ain't that basic. Okay, so look at how slight that bend is, though. I mean, that's really slight. Because don't worry, it's going to... This started out that way, too. And look, that's clearly doing its business. So, okay, so now we just keep going around. And... Uh-oh, what just happened? I feel like something slipped. Nope, it didn't. It was just me holding the thing. Now, again, if you feel like this is borderline too far away for me to actually get a grip on, then just you can always, it's better, more, because you can always wrap it around again and make it shorter, So, better to have it longer. Now, I always look at the top, and I'm picky. Like I said before, you don't need to be as picky as me. I noticed that this is, I want it to look 90 degrees. So I always take this top one and I take my fingernail and I kind of push right on that wire so that when it hits straight across. It's all about manipulating that wire. About being the boss of it all. I want to be the boss of it all. I'm not going to listen to any beads. They're going to listen to me. I was looking at some old designs I did today because I don't know why I had to go through something for other... and I was looking at some of these things, and I remember making them and being so scared I wasn't doing it right or was going to mess up. And I was like, you know what? Now I'm just you can pretty much fix almost anything. And also you can almost use if you're not using it for the flower you're intending it, you can use it for something else and make something else fun out of it. So just do your thing. It's I was so, for the little bit, I was so worried, did I have the exact count? Am I doing this and that? Just look at the shape, work it, figure it out. So again, now I'm cupping. Notice I'm cupping and hitting it a little bit close every time. So I'm going around. I'm going to do, I guess, a whole leaf. I guess I could pause it and then you wouldn't have to watch, but I'm trying to see if there's anything that's going to come up. It's the main thing is the shaping, the cupping I want you to see, right? So I want you to notice that we're doing this. I'll go a little faster for you. I'm not the fastest beater on the planet. There's some people that are I've made 18 million flowers in 2 days. I'm like, that's fun. Did you sleep? So always kind of keeping track and looking. Now here's the other thing. Well, let's get a little bit further along when it gets more unwieldy. Because right now in the beginning, right, we're all still best friends. Me and the basic frame. I'm like, oh, basic frame, I missed you. That's borderline too loose, but I'll take it. Also remember that lacing is going to help you out. So, and if I am a little scatterbrained today, it's because I'm doing this on the end of a long day of teaching and my day-ish job, though I guess this is making flowers has become more of a day job too. So, but this is more fun right now. So anyhow, so again, I'm still got that little slope to it. Now, by the way, if you start to notice that it's getting too cupped, pull it back. Just do a flatter row. That's okay. Like just do one that's just straight out flat across and not underneath it a little bit, you know? You can adjust as you go. And if your lines become wonky or whatever, you kind of pull one to the side. First of all, we're going to be furling these, so it's really not going to matter that much. But second of all, you can kind of adjust for that also. I was kind of hoping almost that I would make a mistake. You can pull the wire over. So right now, again, I'm seeing this gap, but I know that that's where I still want it to be. So you want to hold it like where it would be if it was laced. And that's where I want it to be. I was going to say, that's perfect, but that sounds really braggy. And then I said it anyway. Okay, so we're getting there. I want to get you guys to the end zone where it starts to get really like, ugh, where I was like, oh gosh, they're all going to be like, why did she want to do it in basic frame? Okay, so again, always round down. And also what you can do too is if you are wondering, because it's amazing how much of a difference it makes to have one, or if you include a bead or don't include a bead in terms of the tightness and the cupping. So I normally will put what I think works down and I'll hold it like this. I won't wrap it yet. So I'm just holding it so it's holding against the wire. And then I'll look and I'll say, oh, that looks like, for me, this looks a little too cupped. Nah, it's okay. It's okay. I'll take it. But you can always, if you're unsure, because there's only 14 petals with these, so you might as well put your, time and effort into them. So I put another one down just to experiment to see if maybe that is what I wanted. And then I go, oh, that seems too loose for sure. I'm not really into that one. So now I've made my decision. I'm committed. And if you do wrap it, you can always go back too. And if it's too loose, so what? Just lace it. There's a way to lace it so that you don't see that bagginess also. Lace from the top, pushing down from the top, and then push the bagginess down on the bottom. The gappage down on the bottom. And then when you assemble, you won't even see it. If you use it as one of the inner outer leaves. Inner outer leaves? There is such a thing. Okay, so what do we have right now? Let's double check. Right now we are officially at 11. So let's get rolling. Otherwise you guys are probably